Hello everyone, and welcome to my third tutorial on how to create full-stack web applications. In this tutorial, I'm going to be focusing on setting up your project to support JSON using the Jackson library, and I'm also going to show you guys how to test your controllers using mock-MVC component in the Spring Test module. So the first thing we'll need to do is we'll need to set up Spring so that when we send a request that has JSON contained in it, we'd like that JSON to be converted to a Java object. And when we're sending data back to the client with a HTTP response, we'd like the body of that message contains JSON that was converted from our Java objects to JSON. So the first thing we'll need to do is we'll need to include set up Spring to include the mapping Jackson to HTTP message converter, so as one of the message converters. Spring uses message converters to convert between HTTP requests and Java objects, and to convert from Java objects to HTTP responses. And it finds out which kind of converter you need based on the type, and I think it also does it sometimes based on the accept header that you have specified in your request. So I'm going to specify that we're going to use the mapping Jackson to HTTP message converter, and in order to do that, all I need to really do is add Jackson to the class path. In order for Spring to set up these different message converters, you'll need to have the MVC annotation driven tag in your configuration file, or you're going to have to use the standalone setup when you're using mock MVC, which I'll show you guys in a moment here. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to include the Jackson library on our class path. So I'm just going to search Jackson JSON library, and I'm going to go to the first link here, and well, actually I'll go to the second link. And if you scroll down, you'll see there's three components that you'll need. You'll need Jackson core, annotations, and data bind. So I'm going to search the first one on the MVN repository, and I'll select the one from Faster XML and the 2.4 version. Now paste that in your POM file. I'll make a new section here. And I'm also going to specify the other two artifacts, and they are in the same group ID. So I'm just going to copy this and change the artifact ID name. I'm going to use annotations here, and over here I'm going to use data bind. So if if we have MVC annotation set up in our Spring configuration, Spring will set up a message converter for us, this particular message converter, and convert our Java objects to JSON, or vice versa when we specify. So so the other thing I'm going to add is I'm going to add two dependencies which will allow us to test our controllers. So I'm going to first include the Spring Test module, which will include the mock MVC object, which will allow us to send requests to our controllers. So I'm just going to do go to our testing section here, and write dependency, and I'm going to write org.springframework, and I'm going to specify the Spring Test module, and I'm also going to specify a scope of test. And the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to include the servlet API. So mock MVC creates mock objects for certain components in the servlet API, so that you can test your controllers outside of a servlet container, and also outside of a network. So you can send requests and see what responses are all outside of a network or servlet container. So I'm going to include the servlet API. So I'll go over here. I'm going to use the dependency that we have set in our Spring WebMVC artifact. And I'm going to go down here to the bottom, and they have now Spring WebMVC has a dependency the servlet has a dependency for on the servlet API, and it has a scope set to provide it, since we want the servlet API to be provided by our servlet container when we deploy our project. But right now, when we're doing tests, we want the servlet API on our class path during testing. So I'm going to copy this over and change the scope. So I'm going to go back to our project here, and I'm going to go to our testing section, and I'm going to change the scope to test. So now we have these two dependencies set up so that we can use mock MVC, and we have these dependencies set up so that we can use JSON processing. So now I'm going to show you guys how you can use mock MVC to simulate requests to your controller. But first I'm going to delete some of these classes that we created in the previous tutorial. I'm going to delete car test. And I'm also going to delete calculator, car, and engine over here. And I'm going to rename our test controller to blog entry controller, and this will form the basis for controllers in later tutorials, and we'll fill this out more as we develop our application. So I'm going to create a test directory here, so Maven can find our tests, and I'm also going to create a Java source directory here. And inside there, I'm going to create a test class called, in the tutorial.mvc package, called blog entry controller test. Now, in order to test our controller, we're going to need an instance of it, and we're also going to need an instance of mock MVC. So in order to create an instance of our blog entry controller, I'm going to use Makito to inject the annotation to inject the controller, and this will allow us to inject mocks later on. So you use the inject mocks annotation to inject a concrete implementation into your field. I'll specify a blog entry controller here, and I'm going to specify a setup method. And inside our setup method, I'm going to use Makito annotations.init so that we can inject our controller. Makito annotations.init mocks, and add place this instance into the parameter. And the next thing we're going to need is to create our mock MVC object. So I'm going to create a private variable here. And over in here, I'm going to write mock MVC, and to build it, we use something called mock MVC builders class, which has a static function that allows us to build two kinds of mock MVCs. I'm going to specify the standalone setup. Web app context setup allows you to specify a configuration file for your mock MVC environment, whereas standalone setup will set up a mock MVC environment that will allow you to it will still allow create some default message converters for you, and allow you to have annotations recognized and stuff like that. So I'm going to specify the controller as the argument, and then I'm going to build it. So that gives us our mock MVC object. Now I'm going to create a test method so that we can see that that our requests are being sent. I'm going to now, before I continue, I'm going to use something called mock MVC request builders class so that we can use method chaining to build our request. So I'm going to go up here and import static mock MVC request builders, and we'll import all those functions. And we'll also want to import static the result builders, which will allow us to use method chaining to validate the result of our request. So write down mock MVC result matchers. And I'm going to also import something from the result handlers mock MVC class in a second here. Go ahead and go to your test class, and we're going to use the mock MVC.perform function, and then we specify the request builder function in here. So I'm going to go over and here and write /get. So this is using a request builder method chaining to build our request that we're going to pass inside the perform function. So if I use method chaining, I can specify other kinds of things I'd like to do for this particular request. We can set an accept media type and different other things. So I'm going to specify the get method at the URL, and I'm going to specify a URL test, which is the same, which is the request mapping we already have set up. And I'm going to use a result handler. Now you can use and expect to check for certain kinds of output, but for now I'm just going to use a result handler which will print the request and the response. And I'm going to specify the print result handler. I'm going to import that from the mock MVC result handlers class. Now we're also going to have to add an exception, checked exception to our test, since mock MVC throws one. And now we should be able to verify this works. I'm not going to be using Maven over here for running our test. I'm going to be using IntelliJ IDEA. Now I'm going to go ahead and run this. And you can see that when I send a request, you can see what mock MVC is doing here. It's creating mock HTTP servlet request and a mock HTTP servlet response, and it sends to the it shows by using the print function, we can actually see what the servlet request is. So this is we're requesting something from the test URL, and in the response you can see we get a status code of 200, which means which means okay, and it means that our mapping is working, that it is. Otherwise, if we specified something else, it would return a 404, like if I specify test2, which we haven't really made a URL for that. So you'll see that we get a 404 not found error. So it's mapping correctly, and I'm just gonna erase that too, so we're back to where we started. And so now we should now this should return 200, and we can use this to show that we are converting between JSON and Java objects correctly. So in order to specify that you'd like to convert between a JSON object and a Java object, we're going to use message converters. Now I'm going to specify in here that I'm going to use certain hint. There's certain ways to hint to mock MVC that you'd like an object to be converted using HTTP message converters. So one way of doing that is you use something called a response entity, and you specify a type. Now I'm just going to specify object for now, but yeah, you can specify any kind of class in here. But first I'm going to create a class that we're going to actually return so that we can see it's being properly converted. So I'm going to create a class called and the entities package, tutorial.entities.blog entry, and we'll use this class throughout later tutorials as a component in the blogging application we're going to be making. And I'm going to add a field here. And it's important that you generate getters and setters so that Jackson can read your class variables and convert between JSON representations. So go back to our MVC controller class and create the blog entry. And set the title. And then we're going to return that entry using a response entity. Alright, so if everything works correctly, because we have the Jackson HTTP message converter as one of our message converters, now just to clarify, a standalone setup is creating a series of default message converters for us. It's not using our file over here, our MVC dispatcher servlet configuration file. It's setting up a series of default message converters, and it's going to set up a Jackson message converter if Jackson's on the class path. So I'm going to demonstrate to you guys here that JSON is being converted properly. So let's run this. And if everything worked in response, we should see some JSON. Okay, so it's working. The other thing we need to, I'd like to show you guys is like the other way of specifying that you'd like to return JSON. So I'm going to specify over here something called response body. Response body. And then we can specify the object here. And then we can just return the object. Now, if I run this, we should still get have a JSON converting. So you can see we still have blog entry here, properly converted to JSON. And the other thing I want to show you guys is how to specify that you'd like to receive an object, a JSON object. So you use something called a request body annotation. And then you specify the blog entry type and the entry that you want to receive. So when somebody posts to this URL, we'll be able to grab the blog entry using this will specify we'd like to use a message converter to convert the body in the request to a blog entry object. So I'm going to specify that we'd like to use post here using a request method in Spring. So this will accept post method, and I'm going to, instead of using this object, I'm going to just use the one in the parameter. So this should demonstrate that we are sending and receiving JSON, and it's being converted correctly. So go over to our blog entry controller test, and instead of specifying get, I'm going to specify post, and I'm also going to specify content type, I'm going to specify, let's see, I'm going to specify title. Okay, so now we are sending JSON. So if I run this, we should have properly converting. So let's try this. I think we need to, all right, HTTP media type not support exception. So I'm going to specify that accept header so that it knows that I mean a content type, so that it knows what kind of content we're sending. So I'm going to specify content type, media type application JSON, and this should run now. And also, we want to specify the kind of, we get a status code 400, not acceptable. See. Okay, actually, status code 400 means bad request. So what we're going to, so I think what's going on here is that JSON isn't properly formed. So yeah, we're missing a bracket here. So this should work now if I run this. Okay, so Alright, so you can see that it is returning the JSON object that we sent. So we are converting to and from JSON successfully. So Jackson is set up in our project, and we can now use it for our controllers. One thing I'd like to show you guys before I end this tutorial is I'd like to show you guys how to use JSON path to check various parts of the object that you're receiving is correct. So JSON path is a way of grabbing certain elements out of a JSON object. So in order to use it, I'm going to need to include JSON path on our class path. So go ahead and go to Google and search for JSON path. And I'm going to click on the first link here. And on the bottom of the page, there's 2 dependencies we'll need. And this is integrated with mock MVC, so we can use mock MVC to verify that the expected output is correct. So go ahead and go to your POM file and specify these 2 dependencies in your test section. And then go to your blog entry controller test, and we're going to use the AnExpect method. And expect, and we're going to specify JSON path here, so result matcher. So JSON path, and then you specify a JSON path expression in here. So the way you grab elements out of JSON path, you can grab fairly complex kinds of data, but for now I'm just going to show you some really basic JSON path expression. So go ahead and write $, which means the root element of what you're trying to get variables from, and then specify dot, meaning you'd like to get a member of that root element. So we're going to specify title, and we're going to use a hamcrest matcher to verify that it is test blog title. So I'm going to use it, write down is here, and import that. And you want the matchers class from org.hamcrest. And I'm going to specify test blog title. Let me just put my code here. Alright, so now this should test that the title element is test blog title, and I'll just show you guys that that's working, and also break it so you guys can see that it doesn't. It makes our test fail if we specify an incorrect title here. So I'm going to specify test blog title wrong. And you can see it fails. It says expected is test blog title wrong, but was test blog title. So basically, this is shows you guys how you can test your controllers, and also it helps a lot even for prototyping. Even if you aren't like strictly testing, you can kind of use this like a REST mock MVC, like a REST client, and then you can use JSON path if you want to do some more testing on your output. JSON to verify that it's correctly formed. Anyways, that concludes this tutorial for now. I'm going to use this as a base for creating this tutorial as a basis for creating later tutorials, and which will use this functionality to help build our blogging application. Anyways, if you guys found this video helpful, like and subscribe to this channel, and thank you for watching.